Hey, I'm Travis.
And I'm Adelle.
And we are The Noble Marriage. We hope that through our channel, you will be inspired and motivated so that your marriage will be all that God created it to be. Hey, welcome back, friends. Today, we're in a two-part series with Pure Victory Podcast, and we're just going to be talking about our story.
Yeah, we met them through Instagram, and specifically it's called Restored Communities. And they work with men and women that have sexual trauma from their past or sexual addictions. And so that is part of our story, and that's how we connected. And it's just been such a cool experience getting to know them and their ministry as well. And they reached out to interview us for their podcast.
So we hope you enjoy the story and it makes a difference for you in your life.
Yeah, we love story and we want to hear your story. First off, I was just saying to you guys when we were off air, but love your accents. South Carolina, love it. We'd love to visit there sometime, but hearing a little bit of your story, a little bit of your heart and your passion, but maybe just share with us why you're passionate about what you're doing. A little bit of the beginning point, the start point for you of why you're doing what you're doing and what led you there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, normally I would start with like our marriage and how we started out and how that went, but I want to back up a little bit further to my life and how some of the things that impacted our marriage for 12 years didn't start there. And so growing up, grew up in a great household with some great my family was, my mom and dad was amazing. They took me to church all the time. They really made sure that I was influenced in a way that would be positive. And I had an experience where I was introduced to pornography at a young age through a neighbor's house.
And I just want to jump in really quick because it was the fact that he was introduced to it so young is one of the reasons why we are so passionate about marriages and anything around lust, impurity, pornography, infidelity, because it has had such a major impact on our marriage. And then at about 12 years, we started to experience transformation and just what it took to go from so broken and so much pain to a marriage that is thriving and we love each other more now. And God has just really come into our marriage and made a huge impact. And we've gotten a lot of freedom through that. And so that's why we're so passionate that other couples get to experience the same thing that we've experienced.
Right.
So anyways, I want you to continue your story a bit.
So I was introduced at a young age, and as soon as I was introduced, I was hooked on that. Visually hooked.
You were 8, right?
I think I might have been 7 when that happened. But at 8, I was sexually molested, and 3 times at different ages as a child by 3 different people outside of my family. And I think those may have had an impact on me as well. And so I was really seeking after anything to do with lust. And, I ended up engaging with my girlfriend at the time. I ended up engaging with her in premarital sex, and she got pregnant.
Wow.
And, I went home and I was just devastated. I was like, man, I do not want people to know about me. I don't want people to know about these secrets that I have. And these secrets are really important because I think that when good communication isn't happening in a household, in a family, and secrets become a thing where you try to hide things, they will manifest itself way into life in many different ways. And one of those was I wanted to hide this. And my father was able to see through it when I came home. He was like, hey, tell me what's going on with you. What's going on in your life? And I shared that with him, and it had a big impact on my mom and dad immediately. And we ended up, whether it's right or wrong, we ended up getting married. I dropped out of high school and got married at 16 years old. And then I was trying to navigate fatherhood and life at 16 years old with my spouse and now our new baby. And it just had a huge impact on me where it didn't let go of me. And I ended up ruining that marriage through the same circumstances of infidelity and pornography, and ended up this is important too, I ended up carrying on the generational sin of not speaking about stuff to my boys. I had 2 boys. And I didn't, spend the time with them that I needed to as a father. I was more of an absent father. And I would have told you I was a good father, but I was more of an absent father, and I perpetuated the secrecy and hiding. That secrecy and hiding followed into my life to where eventually, after I was divorced, I met Adele, and I was determined to be a good guy. I wasn't going to be doing these bad things anymore. I was determined this is my time to make life right. And we got married, and I think it was an amazing union together, and everything was going good. But those secrecy and hiding really kept a hold on me, and I ended up falling back into the same similar habits of. One thought that was coming to my mind is like, I'm losing my train
Is
of
it
thought
the
here.
thrill of like the secrets that kept it perpetuating?
I kind of want to talk about like the flesh, leaning into the flesh, but I think I'll just keep going with that. It was more along the lines of needing to hide, needing to keep secrets, and it was like an adrenaline rush too, of keeping a secret. And I really got that from, Adele and I have been talking recently over the last, 2 weeks about this and diving deeper into that. And I think that might have been it. But it also perpetuated, it had a lot of things going on for me. I think because of my hiding and secrecy, that my health started declining. I was having a whole lot of health issues, I couldn't sleep at night, pain and this dis-ease in my body. And I also was in law enforcement and had developed PTSD from some really horrible incidents I was involved in. And so I started drinking heavily, drinking to numb my pain, pain from the things I'd experienced, but also when I'm hiding, when I'm creating secrets, there's some things going on for us and me and you and whoever's listening. If I am lying to myself, like if I'm not being truthful with myself, then I automatically distrust me. And if there's a distrust, then there's this unequal balance in my body that keeps me like off-centered all the time.
Yeah.
And when that happens, it creates a dis-ease in my body, which just is horrible. And I don't like it. So I want to numb it. And I numb that with alcohol. And then eventually I had a lot of pain and started taking some doctor-prescribed narcotics, some really low-level things. And that low level needed to be increased because the pain got more and then increased. And I had symptoms and side effects that kind of went off of those. So I needed more and more and more. And I got to 14 different types of prescription medications.
Wow.
And eventually I just got to the point where I lost my job. I just wasn't effective in my job anymore as a law enforcement officer. And then I became a victim. And I was a horrible victim. My body was wrecked. I was wearing a medical back brace. I walked with a cane sometimes, and I had a service dog. And I felt like I was going to die soon. I just was absolutely wrecked. And, it was the grace of Adele coming to me. And this was, I don't know how long into our marriage, just off the top of my head, 8, 9 years maybe in our marriage, maybe 10 years in our marriage. She came to me and she was like, I'm done. It's either you and alcohol or me. It's either you taking your alcohol and drugs or me and your daughter, but we're not going to stick around and be abused, and we're not going to put up with this anymore of how I'm acting. And man, I needed that. Oh, it was like a breath of fresh air of like, thank you for coming to me, and thank you for giving me that ultimatum, because I needed it and I didn't know what to do. I'd been spending, I don't know, probably a year trying my best to get off of those things. Like it was a trap. If anybody is involved in this type of addiction, the trap that is there and the hurt and the pain. And like, I have pain and I want to cover the pain, but when I cover the pain, I'm covering it with more pain.
Yeah.
And I can't get out of that. And so I went to rehab for a couple months and then got out and was, just so thankful and ready to live a brand new life. And in that brand new life, I still had a lot of issues because my health issues did not go away. In fact, they got worse. But my mind issues was getting better. And I was like, I'm determined to be a better husband now. I'm determined to be a better father. And so I was on this road to do that. And then in 2018, I really saw who Jesus was to me. My faith was the faith of my parents. And I felt like it was a good faith. Like I trusted in a God who was amazing and loved everyone, and he tolerated me. It just wasn't a very convincing faith for me to continue with. Like it was one I wanted hope in, but I really didn't get a whole lot out of. And so I really saw who Jesus was to me. Like it was so personal to me that Jesus would have came down to this earth, even if I was the only one on this earth, that Jesus would have came down for me and died for me. And that made it so personal to me. And I was like, yes, I want that. And that's who I have now. And ever since then, my life has completely turned, completely shifted. And, I just really wanted to still get free of those secrecy and hiding. And that's when it came to you.
Yeah, so I'll back up just for a minute because I was just thinking when we were dating, I remember somehow coming across pornography on your computer or something
I remember
like that.
Yeah, in my apartment, right?
And it devastated me. And it was the most uncomfortable conversation. Physically made me sick to need to have a confrontational conversation. And I just remember you saying, it won't happen again. And, it's just something small that I've struggled with.
Yeah, which is something men do, by the way. When you do something you know is not right, you have shame and guilt, and you truly mean what the words that come out of your mouth. I won't do it again. In fact, you tell it to God. I won't do it again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I remembered okay, I'm going to trust him in this. And then throughout the marriage, I saw so many red flags and chose to ignore them because of the sheer uncomfortableness. I was brought up in a family who loved God, and there were a lot of topics that we just didn't discuss. And this, I had never, other than my one time of talking to you, had never had, any clarity around this entire subject. And so I avoided it and chose to overlook it in our marriage. And, as he is progressing down this road of just more pain in his life, I could really see that something was deeply going on with him and felt like I could not reach him at that point. And it started to get to the point where I didn't recognize him anymore. I would look at him and his body was just so frail looking and almost lifeless. And you didn't share this, but he had even tried to take his life 2 times. And I had no idea. And I think I just had created this fantasy life for myself where things behind closed doors were not good. And I knew it in my heart. But I chose to overlook things so that I didn't have to deal with it. And as long as I didn't have to deal with it, it meant we were okay. And I think we would look at other couples and be like, well, we're better than they are, so I think we're good. And it wasn't until 2016 where we went to our first marriage retreat. We had never been to one before. It's at WindShape in Rome, Georgia. And I remember sitting there listening to the speaker talk about pornography and the effects of it. And I just felt so deeply I think scared, because in my heart, I knew that there was a problem there and I still wasn't ready or wanted to address it at all. But it was in 2016 that I really realized our marriage was not okay and that we really needed help. And so we had started some therapy around that time where we were seeing a counselor together and separate. And she was amazing. She was a Christian counselor, and she really helped us, I think, a whole lot.
Yes.
Specifically me, because I felt like I could not talk to him about anything without arguments happening, and he would take what I would say the wrong way. And then if he was drinking, it was worse. And so I was kind of stuck in this trap of not knowing how to get out. And that's when she really came alongside me and helped me learn how to have a serious conversation of things have to change, or Haven and I are not going to stick around. And I did see this life come up in him, like he wanted to get healing, and I could see that. And I honestly didn't know if it was possible, and I didn't know if I could ever love him again, because it had gotten to the point where I didn't even love him anymore. It was just it was something where I would see him and almost have a distasteful experience every time. And I was stuck with, what am I going to do about that? Because I'm loyal and I believe marriage is for life, and I don't love him, and what do I do? And so that conversation was very pivotal for you to get help. And then I watched him over 2017. he just started to come back to life again, and he was showing up different. He was clean off of all alcohol and opiates, and at the time I still was not aware of pornography or infidelity. And it was in 2018, after the men's hike, when he found Jesus. Like, he came home a totally different man. And when he walked in the door, I was just like, oh, what is this? And he shared with me like just his experience with God, and that intrigued me a lot, because my own faith was not where I wanted it to be. But seeing him have this new spring of life come up for him, that he was passionate about having full healing. And so for the next 6 months, we really fell in love all over again. We started to get to know each other on a different level, and I really started to like this Jesus man. Like, I want more of him.
Absolutely.
And then October 3rd of 2018, I had written, it was actually on our anniversary, September 30th, I had written this post about how much I love him and how loyal he has been for 12 years. And several days later, or I guess it was the next day, I got a text from a friend saying, hey, you better go check your Facebook. There's a bad comment on there. So I went on that post, and my heart just sank, because it was a female saying that he's not as loyal as I think he is. And I just knew in my heart, like as soon as I read that, I knew that all the things that the red flags that I'd had were true. And I remember just asking him, like, have you cheated on me? And he said yes. And it just literally like devastated me on a level that I didn't even know was possible. It just broke my heart. And the next several days were like really, really challenging days. And if you're a spouse that has had to go through that and you're listening to this, like, I want you to know that God sees your pain, because even in those days where it was some dark days, I could really feel the Lord just loving on me. And he told me very early on that if I do the work to heal, he'll use our story for other people to get healing. And at the time I was like, really, God? Like, I'm in the thick of it. And you're telling me there's good ahead? Like, I can't see it. I definitely can't see that. And so right after I found out, we were supposed to go back to WinShape that weekend, and I was not feeling like going. And he dragged me there, and it was so pivotal, because it was Dr. Gary Chapman was the speaker. He's the author of the 5 Love Languages. And he took about 30 minutes to just sit down with us. And I remember asking him, how am I ever going to forgive him? There's no feelings in me of forgiveness. And what he said to me, I had never heard before. He said that forgiveness is, you don't wait to feel like forgiving, because if you wait to feel that way, you'll never forgive. He said you have to make the choice. And once you choose that path of forgiveness, your feelings absolutely will follow. Not right away, sometimes, but once you make that choice, it will happen. And it just kind of gave me this sense of empowerment of, I have a choice in the matter, because I really saw him as the problem. He was the reason for my pain. And he's the reason I can't move on, because he's got to earn it back and do all these things to earn this forgiveness. I had a whole list of things.
She did. It was a long list.
And I was about to make that the letter of the law. And I ended up trashing it that day, because I realized I don't have to wait on him. I get to choose for myself healing, and whatever that looks like. And so it put me on a whole different path of finding healing for me, not for our marriage. It was for me and what I needed with God. And he really just met me there and showed me how codependent I was, and how it wasn't all him in the marriage, because it was really easy when we're dealing with infidelity. It's so easy to be a victim and blame the other spouse. And I knew that's not what God had for me. Yes, I was a victim in what happened to me, but I didn't have to stay that way. I have a choice in the matter. And so I really started to just work on, what does it look like for Adelle to be whole and complete? And I went down this path of just growth and personal development that it's transformed my life forever, because I never realized how much I needed him in a very unhealthy way.
A codependent.
Oh, definitely codependency. Like, I was smothering him, and
vice versa.
And it just made so much sense while we were so disappointed in each other all the time, because we can't complete each other. God is the only one that can do that.
Yeah. I love what you're saying, Adelle. The kind of component of choice that you realized you had in your marriage. And marriage is one of these things that's so interesting, because it's a succession of choice every day that we make, because we don't go from wedding day to divorce. It doesn't work like that. There's a succession of choices that we make every day. And so for you guys, I think that often when a marriage in crisis is, we don't realize that there's choices in some of these matters, because it's just kind of going with the flow, and we're really tied into our emotion with stuff, right? So, we use that as our gauge. I don't feel love anymore. I don't feel like I'm in this marriage anymore. And, we understand that emotion is very much a part of marriage, but if it's our gauge of how we make our decisions, it can be really damaging. But for you guys, the reason I'm setting this up is, when did you start to realize the choices that you had moving forward? Like, was there a crisis point for both of you, Travis, and for you, Adelle, where you're like, okay, this is where I do have choice in the matter. I realize what I'm facing now. What are some things I can do moving forward? So even in a point of crisis that you're going through, like some people have those rock bottom moments, right, where that really hits them. They're like, wow, okay, is this the end of my marriage? And if I don't want that to be, what's the choice I got to make? So long question, but when did you start to become aware, hey, I have choice? I know, Adelle, you mentioned what you're talking about there, but Travis, was there anything like that for you? And then even Adelle, if you want to add to that, if there was other points along the journey for you in that regard.
The first thing that comes to my mind was the October 2018, is it Discovery? No.
Full disclosure.
Full disclosure. Thank you. And this is what I really was impactful for me, is I had a freedom about me in that put her in bondage.
Yeah.
And in that freedom, like when I got free of the secrecy and hiding that was going on for me, it's like, oh, I feel like I'm light. And it's like, oh, this is good. But what I really got is every single person listening to this was born at some point. You're all born at some point, and at some point, you're going to die. And what I was really getting is that whole point in between those two, I wasn't living. I wasn't living a life. I was just kind of surviving and just kind of teetering all over the place, kind of like a ship without a rudder. That's where I was just kind of going all over the place. And in that moment of full disclosure, I was like, I am absolutely determined to live a life and it be full, abundant with you. And I would do whatever it took to be whole and complete and have a successful marriage and be the father that I'm committed to being, be the man of God I'm committed to being, be the person in my community I'm committed to being. I was absolutely like, this is my second chance, and I am not going to mess it up like I have in the past, because I look back at my past of 40 years of just like choice after choice after choice that did not line up with who I'm committed to being. Absolutely didn't line up. And this was a time when I was like, I can make something different. I can choose something different. I can be somebody absolutely different and transformed right now. Like I have a choice to do that. And I don't know what it is. I always felt like I didn't have a choice. Like my parents see me a certain way. My friends see me a certain way. My community sees me a certain way. And I've got to fit in that box. And I really can't leave that box. And I really got that by God, thank you that I can just leave that box at any point and be somebody completely different. Why? Because I say so. I have a say so in it. And so I decided it was time for me to start living my life. And I absolutely 100% engaged in living life. And we have not stopped since 2018. Go ahead.
I was just going to say also the importance of full disclosure, because he got some really awful advice in the beginning.
Oh, this is good. Yeah.
That was from a pastor, unfortunately, saying the pain of infidelity is great enough that you don't need to share if it's been multiple times or one time. And there's a lot of debate that can go on about the details. I didn't need details, but I did need full honesty. And I didn't have it at first. And it came out again a month later. And so that whole month where we had had some healing was just destroyed again. And that was my rock bottom of the worst thing has just happened to me, and it just got worse.
Yeah.
And so I would say to the spouses, like, secret is a secret, and you've got to be honest about the entire thing, or true healing cannot take place. And it was right after we had full disclosure and I was aware now of everything. We went to a marriage intensive with Focus on the Family. It's called Hope Restored.
At WinShape again. Love WinShape.
Yeah, we're big fans of WinShape. And that was the first time that we were taught personal responsibility, honestly. I had never been taught that. We were taking responsibility for each other in the marriage and not allowing us to be responsible for me. And so when we started showing up as responsible individuals and caring for the other person's heart, that is really where our entire marriage started to just take off, because it was like a brand new marriage.
Yeah.
That kind of goes back to what you were saying earlier. If you were looking at me at the problem and the solution,
Right.
then you have zero power,
Right.
and you're just going to be a victim the entire time. That's good.
Yeah.
That doesn't honor the Lord, right? Like the
Right.
Lord said that we're more than conquerors, and it doesn't say that, oh, unless something bad happens to you. So
Right.
no, like you're more than a conqueror in the Lord. And I think that it honors him when we can choose to be spirit led and choose to make good decisions and for ourselves and take our own healing in our hands, or give it to to the Lord and do that together. And it's so common for husbands or whoever it is, whichever spouse that has to confess, to only confess a little bit.
Yeah.
And then the wife deals with it. And then, like you say, then she finds out more. And then everything is for naught. And we call that a staggered confession. And so I just want to pipe in and say that whoever's confessing, in this case, the husband is confessing, the husband doesn't get to decide what portions he shares. I mean, the goal in a disclosure has to be, I'm going to share everything. Everything of what, who I've been with and how often and when it was and stuff like that. But if the wife can't handle it, then the wife can say, okay, this is all I can take for now.
Right.
And then the husband can say, okay, but there is more. I want you to know that. And when there's that deceit, like, no, this is it, but then there really is more, it will come out.
Yeah.
It always seems to come out. And that creates so much more pain. And so it's always on the responsibility of the person who's committed to sin has to confess. You got to get it all out.
Yeah.
And it's not up to you to decide how the other person grieves, how the other person heals, how the other person, or how much they can hear. So I love that you said that everything you went through in that month of healing was all for nothing.
Yeah.
When you found out more, and that's really good. Can you guys speak now to what you're doing? You've got your transformational course, and you're making a lot of impact, and you're coaching people. And so, just to make some resources available, can you speak to that? And maybe even if there's a story or two that comes to mind that's been cool, you could share that too.
Yeah. So we've been entrepreneurs for years, and our businesses were going awesome prior to 2020. And we just kind of watched our businesses fall apart, 20 and 21. And in early of 2021, March, we both felt God calling us to the marriage ministry through what we have been through with our story, and being fully healed and restored, so that other couples could experience that also. And we had these businesses that were full time for us. So how on earth, God, are we going to make this happen? So we kind of started doing it on the side just because we're passionate about it. And our businesses continued to fall apart until August 1st. We ended up closing both the doors without prior knowledge that was going to happen. It was very sudden. And we knew right then when we made the decision to close the doors, we already knew why the doors were closing, because we could see God in the entire process. Now looking back at our businesses, and everything that had happened was so strategic and so gentle, because I think our Heavenly Father was really pulling us in another direction and made it as easy as possible for us. And so then October 1st is when we launched The Noble Marriage, and it has just been like wildfire ever since. Do you have anything?
Yeah, it has been amazing. Like being able to launch The Noble Marriage, and we started a YouTube channel called The Noble Marriage, which has, but depending on when you listen or watch this, has between 85 and 100 videos of great marriage content. We interview some amazing marriage influencers like Dr. Gary Chapman and Ted Cunningham. So some great content on there, as well as we created a online course that marriages can, or
It's a transformation course.
Yeah, that couples can take and completely transform their marriage in a 9-week process, which is great.
And the reason they can do that is because we work with blind spots. So it's not in your viewpoint. You're not able to see that this thing is playing in the background. And so once these couples see these blind spots, they literally are transformed from that moment. And we do that over and over and over all throughout the 9 weeks. And so they strip away their old marriage and they find out why they ended up where they are. And then we put that marriage back together. And now they have a really solid foundation that they can rebuild an entire life on that foundation.
That's good. See, like for one thing, we don't really teach about specifically anger, but one of the issues with like if you were going to have a marriage in a couple in front of you and they had some anger issues, there is one way to help them by giving them like tools and tips and tricks about anger. That's one way. But transformation deals with peeling back the onion of your life and not dealing with that. But like, you're angry and there's pain underneath that. So let's go there. Let's go there and work on that area, because that's going to affect so many things throughout your entire life, including in your marriage, that once we can get people whole and complete as individuals in a marriage, they can show up in a marriage a whole lot better. And so that's what that course is about, as well as we do intensives right here in our office. And we do marriage coaching and very few individual coaching opportunities that we offer.
I think like one of the reasons we're so passionate about this is the enemy, like Satan's deception is just like wreaking havoc on people's lives. And now that we're in ministry, I think God has opened our eyes even more to the deception that's happening inside a marriage and how we live with these thorns that are just playing out in our life and we don't deal with them. And that's all part of the plan, because it just creates disconnection and loss of intimacy and all of that. And so like, it just makes me like more on fire to help marriages, because I see the plan. I see the scheme.
Yeah. I want to add to that. Let's go back to my story when I'm talking about hiding and secrecy and porn and lust. And you guys may experience this, that may be listening to this right now, is that may be part of your life, like, or you may be a spouse of someone who's having those type of things, porn or lust. And here's what I want to say is, back to the anger thing I said earlier, is that's like symptoms. That's symptomatic of something deeper, and that's a heart issue. Like, there's something in my heart that makes me do what I do. And if I can change my heart, and King Solomon talks about out of the heart flows the wellspring of life. Like, it's so true. Like, the things that come out of my heart really is impactful,
Yeah.
It sure is. I think that's so good. I think that the next week we want to talk about that more with you guys, getting into how to identify the heart, how to talk about what the secrets that we carry, how to get that out, and what you guys have been through and how you guys teach. And that'd be so good. But thank you so much for being on this week and sharing your story. Your story of transformation and healing is so beautiful and powerful and God honoring, which is the best part. And so maybe just plug again, where can people find you quickly online and on social media?
Go to YouTube and type in The Noble Marriage, or thenoblemarriage.com, or Instagram, The Noble Marriage.
Yeah. And thank you
so
guys.
much, Adelle.
Thank
Good
you
job
so
for
much.
being with us. Yeah, we're looking forward to chatting with you next week, and you'll want to stick around, everybody, to listen to that one, because we're going to get more out of them, and even a little bit of coaching for marriages, maybe a little bit too. I'd love to hear that from you as well. So thanks, guys, and thanks to all the listeners out there for journeying with us and checking with us this week. We'll see you next time.
Because I believe that the lust, the impurity, the traumatic events that happened in his childhood, it absolutely affected our sex life. And I think it really impacts the spouse who has no idea about any of the things in the past. And it's like, something's wrong with me. What is wrong with me that our sex life isn't thriving? That's one of the things that we really talk about, because when there are two people in a marriage who are not whole and complete people, thorns also make us close our hearts. And when our hearts are closed, there's no connection and there's no intimacy there.
So thanks for joining us and watching that video. Join us next week when we're going to be talking with them again about how we use our story to coach other couples.
See you next time. Bye.